Welcome to Blaze News The Mandate, Day 33. I'm Jill Savage. Tonight on the agenda, President Trump is optimistic about a Ukraine war peace deal being reached in Saudi Arabia this week. Trump had this to say while speaking to reporters on Air Force One.
Let's see what happens with the whole Russia-Ukraine thing. I think you're going to have eventually, and maybe not in the distant future, you're going to have some pretty good results coming out of Saudi Arabia this week.
Russian sanctions may have been all the rage, but Elon Musk says sanctioning the 10 richest Ukrainian oligarchs could be the key to ending the war. Musk rebuked claims that he's a Russian cat's paw, pointing out Starlink has given Ukraine internet access for years. Is Syria's new boss worse than its old boss? Well, if you're a Christian, that is certainly true. More than 1,000 religious minorities have been slaughtered by the Islamist regime since Thursday. Ever the foreign policy expert, Joe Biden had predicted an era of peace in the country following Bashar al-Assad's overthrow back in December.
The fall of the regime is a fundamental act of justice. It's a moment of historic opportunity for the long-suffering people of Syria.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced the cancellation of 83% of USAID programs. In an ex post, Rubio claimed that more than 5,200 contractors receiving those funds either failed to aid U.S. interests or actively undermined them. Rubio went on to say that 18% of the remaining programs will be administered with the State Department oversight. Did Democrat super PAC ActBlue break more than just campaign finance laws? In an ex post, Steve Bannon War Room co-host Natalie Winters accused ActBlue of funneling money into NGOs that facilitated illegal immigration. Several of ActBlue's funding partners, like Border Angels and Human Borders, help assist illegal aliens, with one helping them avoid deportation with an ICE emergency hotline. Additionally, Winters uncovered NGOs that were directly linked to lawsuits against Trump's immigration-related executive orders. If you'd like to see just how far this rabbit hole goes, I would highly recommend reading her thread on X. And if you're an illegal immigrant, and all that Democrat dark money has run out, well, CPB can finance you a one-way ticket back home. Border Enforcement is offering a self-deportation option on the CBP Home app, allowing illegals to take the easy way out of the United States. So if you're an illegal who has basically your time is up, you'd like to go home, you can just submit intent to deport on the app today. And you know what? It's that time of year now as Congress gears up to vote on a continuing resolution to fund the government until September 30th. The Trump-endorsed legislation bolsters defense spending while trimming down non-defense earmarks. However, fiscal hawks like Senator Rand Paul have accused the bill of keeping spending at pandemic levels while adding to the national debt. And President Trump hosted Silicon Valley's finest to hear their case for tariff exemptions. The tech CEOs gathered at the White House to avoid becoming casualties in the trade war, while getting a pulse check on the tech sector funding approved under Joe Biden. So with all that, now let's bring in Editor-in-Chief Matthew Peterson. So MP, it's good to have you back. When we look at ActBlue, all this money that they're shelling out, right? Do we even think that it's even a question at this point that they're trying to get the illegals to come in here and that they're the ones that are facilitating all this money between the two groups?
The corruption that ActBlue has been part of, this has been going on for decades. And, you know, we could sit here for an entire show and just talk about everything that ActBlue has done that if they were on the other side, they would have been prosecuted for a long time ago. And that's everything from money laundering to here we see supporting lefty causes, supporting illegal immigrations. But this is not a surprise. I mean, ActBlue has been corrupt for a long time, and they need to be investigated 1,000 ways from Sunday.
So my thing is, when I look at ActBlue, and then you combine that with everything in, Marco Rubio canceling programs and Doge doing what it's doing, right? They're actively going after programs that are no longer serving the interests of the American people. So what kind of a future does ActBlue have if the stolen taxpayer dollars are no longer going to fund this Democrat operation?
Yeah, it's definitely going to hurt them. I mean, this is a vehicle. It's a corrupt vehicle to move cash around, right? So it's important to remember, I mean, BLM, right? You supported BLM somehow through ActBlue. why, right? Why is there one entity through which all this money is being funneled? So absolutely, with USAID and other programs hopefully coming to an end, there'll be less money running through that, that channel, and less in the slush fund that's going to all kinds of corrupt interests. But I'm telling you, we need to investigate ActBlue for a number of things, not just this.
If you look at the Trump administration the first time versus the Trump administration this time, I don't think that we would have seen a group of the biggest tech CEOs in the country making their pilgrimage to the White House to say, hey, Donald Trump, how are things going? How can we help? How can we best work together here? But that is exactly what happened today.
This is what winning looks like. This is what winning looks like. When you win, people like this will come and congregate. They know that this is a definitive win, and that's why they're all here. Last time, the entire country, right, all the major institutions in the country were against Trump. Trump was the bad guy. You have realistic businessmen, it doesn't matter the ideology, they're realistic, and they know how the bread is going to be buttered this time. They know that he's serious, and that's why they come to the table. And by the way, this is what all Republicans need to grasp onto, right? When you're serious about what you're doing, you scare people. And when you scare people, they play ball. But they won't play ball with you if they don't think you're serious. And in the past, they haven't thought the right was serious. Now, everyone's going to come to the table and kiss the ring.
Republicans have been scared to scare people for so long, but winning it's fun. Everybody likes it. And we're going to keep the winning going because former Trump White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows will give us his grade on Trump's first 50 days. Just ahead. You don't go out and buy a life jacket when the boat is already sinking, and you certainly don't go out and buy gold when the economy has already collapsed. But clearly, others are heeding this advice because gold hit all-time highs earlier this year, and it's not too late for you. Birch Gold specializes in helping you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold for no money out of pocket. One 5-star review says they're knowledgeable, helpful, there's no pressure. That's what you get with Birch Gold. You can get your free info kit on gold by texting the word Jill to the number 989898, and there's no obligation. You're just going to get information. They have an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and countless 5-star reviews. Just text Jill to 989898 and let the experts at Birch Gold help secure your future today with gold. Today marks 50 days since Donald Trump took office once again, and everyone has an opinion on how he's done so far, but very few of us have actually seen what it takes to run the Oval Office, and that's what makes our next guest so qualified to give us his report card. So let's bring in Mark Meadows. He's former Trump White House Chief of Staff and senior partner at the Conservative Partnership Institute. So Mark, of course, we're always there at CPI whenever we do our shows in Washington, D.C., so thanks always for that hospitality. And let's just start there with Trump and day 50. He's done so much. This has been such an historic run. What grade would you give Donald Trump so far?
Listen, it's breathtaking. I give him an A+, and I'm a hard grader, but an A+ really for the speed of which they've been able to address so many things. Can you imagine? Here we are, most of his cabinet, not only the highest secretaries, but also the people underneath have already moved through the Senate, which is unheard of at this kind of speed. But really, when you start to look at the executive orders, the amount of effort that they're spending on not only looking at the waste, fraud, and abuse, but the billions of dollars that have been uncovered, much to the Democrat chagrin, because I just came from the Capitol an hour or two ago, and I can tell you many of the Democrat members of Congress are hoping that Elon Musk and President Trump stop their efforts because of what's getting exposed. So he gets an A+. I think most of America, the people that are tuning in right now, even the most avid Trump supporter, I think are surprised. I'm a bit surprised at the speed, and again, it's breathtaking.
Mark, there's so much momentum right now. Momentum is the word that Russ Vought used today to describe support for the CR. I look at what's happening right now, though, and I think all this momentum is great. This is incredible. We're all for it. the premise of this show, the mandate, is about the real battle, right? The real battle is implementing the mandate, which is not even so much Republican versus Democrat, but Republican, MAGA Republican versus the administrative state. So given your experience, what do you think are the big obstacles that are going to start to rear their ugly heads as the Trump administration moves forward and fights?
Well, you've gotten right to the heart of the matter, and it's probably my biggest concern, not only in the next 50 days, but in the next 90 to 120 days, because there's two types of people that love to spend money in Washington, D.C., Democrats and Republicans. and you know the swamp is already fighting back. Even some, we're seeing some reports of some friction within the cabinet. Generally, that's overplayed. New York Times and others reporting on that. That's normally one bit of little color given at a water cooler that's extrapolated. But here's the big concern that I do have is as they start to find these battles, and this week, as soon as possibly tomorrow, the House is going to vote on a continuing resolution, which most conservatives in the past have not supported. What are they doing? They're willing to support that to give the president a tactical play, but I'm afraid of what they may run into in the Senate. The Senate, they take more naps than they do votes, and so it's critically important that we make sure that that momentum that Russ Vought was talking about and that both of you have covered very well continues to go, because the honeymoon phase is not over. But it has the potential of being over if the American people don't continue to applaud. And I'm not talking about a little golf clap. I'm talking about applauding in a real terms, because you can never imagine the resistance that's here in Washington, D.C. when Donald Trump and his team showed up in the Oval Office.
Well, Mark, let's go into that honeymoon phase a little bit more. How long do you think that Republicans actually have to get some of these substantial cuts made?
Literally, it's what I would say is by the end of May. So it's a very short horizon. You could possibly extend that into July. But generally speaking, what happens in July is everybody's waiting to get out of town in August. And so what they do is they punt it until September. And they come back and they go, oh my gosh, it's like a florist being surprised by Valentine's Day. We don't have much time left, and they act surprised in September that they don't get it done. So I would say the end of May, first part of June, and so those that are tuned in right now, even if you've got a member of Congress that is very, very supportive of what's being done, get on the phone and call them and applaud them for keeping this momentum going. I can tell you, as a member of Congress, before I was White House Chief of Staff, I heard 10 complaints for every one attaboy, and I can tell you that members of Congress are following that. So if you're tuned in right now, even if you've got a great conservative member of Congress, let them know how you feel. The other part of that is if you're represented by a Democrat, let them know that President Trump and Elon Musk continue to speak for you, not for the special interests here in Washington, D.C., because I can tell you the special interest lobbies, they want to buy a little bit of time. And time is not on our side. This is not a fine wine. It doesn't improve with time. So we've got to get it done.
So you recently met with the House Freedom Caucus about the CR. Tell us a little bit about that and your thoughts about what's going on with the budget.
Yeah, literally, the House Freedom Caucus, obviously Chairman Andy Harris is leading the way now. It's a group that I'm intimately familiar with, having helped start it back in 2014-15. And like I say, I don't know that I ever voted for a CR when I was a member of Congress, just primarily, I saw it as a kick the can down the road kind of measure. This is unique this year, and so I'm applauding those who are embracing that tactical move. The president obviously asked the Freedom Caucus to help out with that, but I'm embracing it for another reason. We've got, not only do we have the DOGE effort that is transformational. I've never seen anything like it. and I can tell you there's more to come in the grants and everything that actually need to be looked at from HHS and NIH and CDC and others. But you also have the budget reconciliation process that's coming. And so we're going to be able to work very quickly if the government is not shut down and funded properly. We'll be able to work very quickly to address some of those through some of the procedural tools that are in our toolbox that aren't normally there. They're there uniquely this time because we control the White House, the House, and the Senate. And so we've got to get it done. The president asked for that. And without exception, I believe, every member of the Freedom Caucus jumped in and was willing to help out with that, primarily because that's the play call that's been made right now.
Now, Donald Trump put his support behind the House bill, not the Senate bill. And one of the reasons is primarily because he wants his tax cuts to be permanent. And that was included over on the House side. Now, there's that little R word, that recession word has been floated around there in D.C. now. So how critical is it to make sure that the Trump tax cuts become permanent?
Yeah, listen, had it not been for a scoring problem back in 2017, they would have been permanent. What happens is that obviously the president wanted them permanent back then. The amount of money that those tax cuts scored at actually made them where they had to have an expiration date. But I can tell you this, that the interesting thing is even the scoring mechanism said that we were going to actually get less revenue from the Trump tax cuts. Well, surprise, surprise, we actually got more. The economy was actually very robust. It did exactly what President Trump and others in the administration promoted. I think the same will happen now. And yeah, they are talking about the R word, and obviously the stock market has not been kind over the last week. But I'm very optimistic that what you will see coming out of actually meetings that happened today and some meetings that will be happening over the next 48 hours, that it will spur economic growth and manufacturing growth here in the United States, much to the surprise of many, perhaps on Wall Street, but certainly to the surprise of my Democrat colleagues over in the House.
Now, I want our audience to know this. I mean, I was someone who was very skeptical and disillusioned with the Republican Party before Trump in the era. You were fighting. I was doing a bunch of things in politics, but I thought, this is over. The Republican Party is really over. This is one big uniparty. People don't realize how bad it is, et cetera, et cetera. And I want to say, in the intervening years, as certainly I turned back to politics, CPI, the Conservative Partnership Institute, it's everyone associated. Those are all my friends. I mean, the Rachel Bovards, it's like everyone over there. I mean, even just associated, Clint Brown and, Chris Bedford over there. And I have to say to our audience, I mean, these are the people who really get it and who do the best work. And that's why we're proud to be associated with them and to have the studio there. But, Mark, I would love it if you could say something about really what CPI's trajectory has been over the last years, because it is remarkable how the sort of intellectual leadership, right, that I see coming from there, it stands apart. It really does.
Well, you're very kind, and obviously not only are you guys welcome here, but we consider this home for you, and so we want to be the place that is the safe space for conservatives. When Jim DeMint started CPI, he came to me. I was actually in Congress at the time. I said, Jim, there's no fringe benefit for being a conservative, for being a real conservative in Washington D.C. You get invited to less dinners. All the cool kids parties you don't get invited to. The only people that really seem to appreciate it are people like you and people that are tuned in right now on Main Street that honestly, they want their government back. And so you mentioned Rachel Bovard. What a true patriot and a well-spoken individual. But for us, it's not just the ideas. We want to come and embrace people that show courage. So sometimes those people, both in the House and the Senate that show courage, they're all alone. Well, they've got a home here at CPI because if you show courage and you're supporting the America First agenda, we want to let you know that you're not alone. And so maybe we're not a think tank, but we certainly are an action tank, and we want to make sure that we actually deliver on the promises, just like the president's delivering right now. Both of you are covering that. We can be not only supportive, but we have to make sure that when the going gets rough, all the errors that are coming in at the president and Elon Musk. I was on Capitol Hill earlier. There was a group up there protesting Elon Musk. I was the skunk at the party as I came through. They didn't necessarily. I told them that they were actually asking the wrong guy if they were wanting to get rid of Elon Musk. But I think, to your point, a lot of Americans became very disillusioned with the Republican Party. And I, for one, believe that just because you have an R behind your name does not make you righteous. Until you start representing those forgotten men and women across the country, the millions of forgotten men and women, and that's what CPI does. Hopefully, we embrace them and do a good job of making sure that their voice is heard here on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, making conservatism cool again. One, it needed to happen. And we are so thankful, Mark, for you and everybody out there at CPI, one, for coming on the show today, but for everything that you guys do out there to support us when we're in Washington, D.C.
Well, it's certainly been a pleasure, and I will say I look forward to coming back and giving you kind of behind the scenes. Like I say, the Ways and Means Committee have met all day today with actually initiatives to try to make those tax cuts permanent, but also to make sure there's no taxes on tips, no taxes on Social Security, all the things that the president promised. Hopefully, they're on board 100%. But it's great to have been with you both.
Mark, thanks so much. Matthew, when we look at it, they have been so wonderful to us every time we go out there, just going above and beyond, helping with anything that we could possibly need.
Yeah, and as you heard the man say it, I mean, they are a do tank. I mean, they tie the room together. They bring people together, and in an important way. And that's really important because there's a lot of groups that get people together, right? The question is, who are you getting together and why? And in this case, like you said, they look for bravery, they look for courage, and they're bringing the right people together. And I just want to praise any group, right, that stands out, that actually seems to get it in this day and age. So good on him.
No uniparty Republicans. Certainly not one of them, Chris Bedford. He's going to join us to break down the CR fight coming up next. We've been talking about it. It's time for another CR fight in D.C. March 14th is the deadline, and the clock is ticking. But when we did this all the way back in December, the plan started out at 1,500 pages before they were able to narrow it down to 116 pages. This one is supposed to be a clean CR, and somehow House Republicans have managed to put forward a plan that's just 99 pages. So is it actually different this time? Let's bring in Chris Bedford for more. So Bedford, let us know, what are the biggest sticking points that we see right now, and how likely is a deal before the deadline?
I mean, it's a difficult thing to say right now. People are working around the clock. It's extremely high tension right now in Congress, in the White House in particular, which is watching this very carefully. There's a lot of backroom negotiations going on. After Thomas Massey, who's already filled up the slot, he's taken the musical chair for who gets to be the protest vote this round. Republicans can only lose a single member if every Democrat is actually able to show up and vote. Don Beyer, who's a Virginia congressman, conservative, has said he can't do it. He's not going to vote yes for the CR because of the spending increases that are going, or the funding levels essentially they're taking over from President Biden's administration. Also, his district is almost 17% federal employees. So that's something that's working against some of these guys. A lot of these folks are actually, especially in Virginia, where the Republic, it used to be a red state. Now it's kind of somewhere between a purple and a blue state, and that's largely because of the expansion of the federal government. So Don Beyer goes out there, which basically means you guys need to buy me. You need to figure something out. The White House is going to have more focus on that congressman than they've had before. our friend, the legislative director, James Braid, is probably going to be meeting with him to get these negotiations across. And at the same time, you have people like Rand Paul in the Senate, Republicans, who've never voted for a CR in their lives. And they're going to now, it looks like, continue that trend. Rand Paul delivered what I kind of think is one of the more asinine and stupid libertarian-style opinions I've heard in a long time, which is just going on and on about all of the different things he came to Washington to solve, none of which are any closer at all to being solved, and how he needs to shut down the Donald Trump government in order to continue on that exact same course. It's people who are more comfortable, and it's easier to be a protester than it is to actually govern. That's the kind of place that you often find Democrats singing songs. They're more happy waving signs and singing songs than they are actually governing. Governing is hard work. This is a different government than Joe Biden's government. You have Russ Vought in there. You have Elon Musk in there. You have President Trump in there. The programs that the executive does not want to spend money on are probably going to not be spent on. I mean, this is the ability for the administration to withhold money from spending that has been appropriated by Congress is something that the writer of the Declaration of Independence practiced as president. It's an original American idea, all the way back to America's second president. This is our third president. This is something that is kind of baked in. They got rid of it during Nixon. They said that you can't do that anymore. Congress did that. And this administration is betting that that is unconstitutional. They're going to push that with a group of judges in the Supreme Court who typically do have a lot of respect for what the founders envisioned the Constitution to mean at the time. So it's likely that they'll side with them. Anyways, I know that everyone in Washington, D.C. is getting ready for St. Patrick's Day, and no one will be celebrating it. No one will be celebrating if the government is shutting down on Friday and everything
You
is
will
scrambled.
be.
No,
You still will be.
We know that you will be. By the way, Chris, I was watching you while I was gone, and I was almost inspired to wear a tie today, but not quite. Not quite there.
Matt Peterson was on vacation with his kids.
Yes.
And he could not. He was on the planning calls. He was texting us. Eventually, I had to say, Matt, go skiing. But it looked like a blast, man. I wished I was there as well.
It was a blast, but I couldn't stay away. Not only from the show, there was like 3 or 4 other things going on that I was obsessing about. But speaking of obsession, and you were speaking of Russ Vought, actually, when you look at the CR, yeah, I mean, this is a very concerning time. It's a very stressful time for anyone who's trying to get this done. The way you described it, I mean, there's a sort of knife's edge to this battle, but within the Republican Party. But let's go through the positives here. I mean, Russ Vought is giving cover to Republicans. I mean, here's the Darth Vader, right, of the budget saying today that there's a lot of momentum and that we just need to get this CR passed. Obviously, the Don, has said this has his blessing. You're going against Trump if you stand out from this. And we just talked to Mark Meadows, who, started the House Freedom Caucus, helped start it. And he went over there and said, a lot of people understand that this would be the first time they'd vote for a CR, but they understand the situation. So I wonder if, for all the concern and the tension right now, if the momentum, as Russ said, isn't going in one way. I mean, certainly you have to go out of your way, like Rand did, to be a stick in the mud on this one.
Rand's vote is, we're kind of counting on Rand. My newsletter last week counted on Rand as probably a no vote. He's less afraid of Donald Trump, I think, than maybe Senator Ted Cruz might be, someone who Trump could have an impact on that election if he chose to. I think there's a real chance of that. I mean, Russ Vought changes the game. He brought a huge amount of pressure. There's no one in the White House who has more credits with the fiscal conservatives in Capitol Hill than Russ does, an absolute long-time person who wrote out the game plan for what they intend to do and was one of the most efficient head officers, top talents of the last administration, and is primed to do so again. It's a strange thing where you have Congressman Harris, the Freedom Caucus, a friend of the show, who one of his first interviews was with Blaze News Tonight, The Mandate. He's going to vote. He's whipping his caucus for this. He wants to pass this. They're saying you can't lose this momentum. And I think in the House of Representatives, which is where everyone's watching, biting their nails right now, it's kind of going to pass. I think that they're going to bring this pressure down. Trump is going to come down like 1,000 bricks on these folks. They're going to have to They may have to come up with some kind of carve out. They may have to get some special invitations. They may have to get some promise of something down the road, which is always a dangerous thing to get in Washington, D.C. People don't always pay their credit cards here. And they'll get them through. It's the Senate that I'm really worried about. Democrats are actually itching for a shutdown fight right now. And that's usually shutdown fights kind of boil up from the bottom. It's like the backbenchers and the activists who want to say, we're sick of this. We're shutting this government down. And Democrats haven't shut down the government since they really did a lot in the early Carter days, and in the Reagan days, back and forth, usually actually fighting over abortion, sometimes amongst themselves as the parties were starting to change back then. They have lost the habit of doing it since Ronald Reagan. It's not been a major thing. And it's not always a good idea. But this one is actually coming from Democratic leadership. I mean, Democrats seem to be united in their wish to actually pick a fight that actually has some sticking power. What I don't think they're counting on is the fact that if they do shut down the government, if they refuse to help John Thune get to 60 votes, which now with Rand Paul gone is going to take 8 of them to get there, if they refuse to do that, then Donald Trump gets to pick what is essential services and what is not. And I think that could potentially make the entire government very legally and strongly Elon Musk's playground. Do they really want to do that?
Well, we were talking to Mark Meadows, and he says the Republicans have basically until May for this honeymoon period to go through. But, Chris, the Democrats are already in complete disarray. Now, you wrote about this in your Beltway brief today. So tell us how they're navigating this very difficult time right now.
Well, of course, you've got the progressives. They're the loudest people in the room. They're like atheists or vegans. They're going to tell you their politics as soon as you talk to them, right after their name, maybe even before it. They're saying that basically true progressivism hasn't been tried. True transgenderism hasn't been tried. True abortion 100% all the time just hasn't been tried. And Bernie Sanders is obviously a major one. Even AOC has been quiet. Senator Chris Murphy, who's actually been a pretty interesting thinker in Congress over the past couple of years. I watched him closely on social media and the effects of technology on children. Has gone absolutely full progressive. These are the things he wants to fight over. And they're not very popular right now in Washington, D.C., where a lot of professional Democrats rightly blame them for the losses that have happened. They said this was a long time coming. Donald Trump kept progressivism going much longer than it otherwise would have as an opposition party. But they finally got their chance to govern again, and it was a complete and total disaster and was soundly rejected by the American people. But you have to be careful with the progressives because you can never underestimate a cult. And revolutionaries have a lot more staying power, a lot more ability to actually take control than those kind of lazy status quoers who are just trying to defend what they've got. The second group of people, I would say, would be the people who are trying to play possum. Those are folks that are kind of following the James Carville model of maybe we need to pull back. Maybe we need to slow down. Republicans have a huge amount of leverage. American people have rejected their ideas. Republicans are famous for, and absolutely will, trip on their own shoelaces. They're going to get themselves in trouble. Republicans in the House of Representatives right now might single-handedly shut down the federal government. So until they make that mistake and you actually see a vulnerability, you're just wasting ammunition charging at them. And the last group, which may be the most prominent, are the pragmatists. Those kind of like Governor Newsom of California, who are sitting there looking at the whole thing saying, all right, well, progressivism's been ejected by the American people. It's still popular in my home state. I've been one of the most progressive governors in American history. But I think that in order to save face, I could eject some of the more radical ideas that also happen to have the smallest constituencies, even if they're very vocal. And an example of that is he said women shouldn't compete in men's sports, or he said men shouldn't compete in women's sports. It's unfair, or at least he didn't say they shouldn't, but he said it is deeply unfair. And that Kamala Harris made a mistake on that, and Donald Trump pummeled her on it. It was getting attacked left and right, but the actual constituency for men and women's sports is really small. They use social media, they use astroturfing, they use corporate backing, they use intimidation to make it seem like they were a mass movement, but they never were. I think it's 60, the latest poll, CNN is basically begging Democrats to back off of this. CNN. The latest poll, I think it's 67% of Democrats think that's unfair, 64% of independents, and 90-something% of Republicans. That's, as the CNN reporter himself said, that's as close to a unifying issue as we see in the United States today. So those pragmatists are trying to eject those things. Those are the 3 different lanes. And I think the possums, that third one, is just be quiet. Let's see how this shakes out. probably leaning more towards the pragmatist side, the Hakeem Jeffries of the world, who are just saying, please behave. Please don't scream at the president when he comes to this chamber. Let's try to regain the trust of the American people. In between those three lanes, you're going to see the future of the Democratic Party shake out.
Well, I hope people go to the Blaze to read this article. It's a very good breakdown of these three groups. And I'm rooting for the pragmatists. I really am. I'm rooting for them. It's so hard to believe it because we haven't really seen it for many years. But, let's go pragmatists. I'm fine with it.
I love the new Democratic Party. I love Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her old chief of staff. It's the most honest leftists we've ever had. They'll say it. The Green New Deal is about economics and socialism, that we are here as a revolutionary force, that we think that mentally ill men should be in your daughter's locker, and abortion shouldn't be safe, legal, and rare. It should be all the time and paid for by you. I love the open left because that gives you something to really fight against.
Listen, Bedford, my takeaway from this segment is that you're saying nobody in D.C., if we have a CR fight, nobody's going to be celebrating St. Patrick's Day. And I know that's not true because you are in our presence right now, and you will be one of them.
Oh, absolutely. I will. And, on happy days, on sad days, an Irish pub is always a good place to be.
Bedford, we'll catch you later. Thanks so much.
See you tomorrow.
We'll have J.D. Vance's brutal takedown of a heckler. Stay tuned. This is normally the part of the show where we do a poll question and we interact with you in the audience to see what you think about what's happening with the day's events. But X was down today. Elon Musk might need to go back to do some of his day job. He did post on X earlier today saying there was and still is a cyber attack on X. We get attacked every day, but this was done with a lot of resources. He said either a large coordinated group or a country is involved, and they're tracing it right now. So unfortunately, we can't get all of your thoughts and feelings about what's happening today, but we will definitely get back to that as soon as possible, hopefully tomorrow. But instead, we were looking at J.D. Vance because, you know what, if X is down, we can't be having all the J.D. Vance memes, but he was actually out there doing his day job and speaking. So let's go ahead and watch him at a conference earlier today in D.C.
You go across the world and you see a very consistent relationship between a massive increase in immigration and a massive increase in housing prices. And we have to be honest about that. Well, I see one of our nice representatives out here wants to actually, I guess, continue to flood the country with illegal immigrants, making your communities and citizens unaffordable. But ma'am, with all respect, one of the reasons why we're doing what we're doing is because we want to make it more affordable for Americans to live. That is one of the reasons why we're doing what we're doing.
And he went on to say, of course, now it takes, basically two incomes to afford housing in this country, and how illegal immigration is a huge deal because it is sucking up a lot of the affordable housing in certain states right now.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't when like J.D. Vance slams protest. J.D. Vance just uttered common sense that somehow you're not allowed to say, and it has nothing to do with whether you like immigrants or you don't like immigrants, this is just pure math. It's pure math. And any sane person would know that if you bring in a bunch of illegals, right, it's gonna cause all these problems. This should not be controversial, but it is. And what's sad is that so many people who work in these cities don't want to acknowledge the basic reality that would make American citizens' lives better.
And when you have millions of people that are potentially going to be deported from this country, guess what? Everybody's rents are going to be starting a little bit more affordable. Like, it'll take time because this is a slow-moving thing, but it will eventually get there.
In places like California, I mean, this should be obvious, but what's weird is people have been psyoped into thinking that it's no big deal and it has nothing to do with the cost of housing. And it really is crazy. This is just basic math that city administrators, the people who are actually in charge, perhaps, of the city where you live, they just deny it. They deny it. And so this truth coming out, that response, now there's momentum behind that. And I think everyone in the nation is going to have to acknowledge some of these basic truths moving forward.
Well, we were just talking about the three factions of the Democratic Party with Chris Bedford. So Kamala Harris, the former vice president, she held this job right before J.D. Vance. Let's go ahead and take a look at what she was up to today.
At what point do we also uplift and highlight the consumer's right to also expect, and you can debate with me if it should be a right, I think it should, to expect that the innovation would also be weighted in terms of solving their everyday problems, which are beyond my craving for Doritos, but about whatever, and I know the work is happening around, the scientific discoveries, for example, to cure long-standing diseases. But I'm going to throw out another one. And you all, again, please get back to me any information you have. I would love it if there would be an investment of resources in solving the affordable housing issue in America. Like, helping with that.
They eventually got to the same point, but they held the same job, and she wanted to be the leader of the free world. You hadn't seen this yet, and I feel like your brain is about to explode.
I feel the brain cells leaving my body, and it hurts. It hurts. I am just so glad, thankful. I don't want to respond to her comments. I'm just so thankful that woman is not someone that I have to watch anymore. I don't know what kind of pills she's on or whatever, but that was just painful.
She kept going on and saying that she would give up her rights for basically the Doritos that she wanted to be delivered by Uber Eats. And I'm like,
is she spiraling right now?
How did they held the same job, right? We know that Joe Biden was doing the auto pen signatures now from our people over at the Heritage Oversight Project. I don't know what her excuse is.
I don't know if that's a one-off, but if there's more clips like that out there, maybe I should go and just suffer through the pain to see if she's kind of spiraling into oblivion at this point.
This is what she has been up to ever since they took her off the campaign trail.
Well, talk about dodge a bullet. Just the difference between a year ago and now, that we actually had to put up with that for so long. Thank God.
Well, and you can definitely see that we have a much different way of life now. It is much better for the American people with J.D. Vance as vice president, Kamala Harris nowhere near the White House anymore. But you know what? If we want to keep this way of life, there's a lot that we still have to do to maintain this.
Yeah, my thought for the day is that as we all watch what's happening, it's very easy to get excited, and you should be excited because we can talk about a golden age. We can talk about so many wonderful things that are happening in our nation's capital and perhaps throughout the country. But the battle isn't over, and the danger is that we allow other people to do the work for us, that we think, Donald Trump is, coming in to save the country, and his administration is great, and we believe those things. I see great things happening there. But if you think that that's all there is to it, right, or we just allow ourselves to coast because of those things that are happening, there won't be a golden age. What really needs to happen, the lesson of the election is so many people got out there and went to work since 2020, from the day that Trump lost the election. Everyone realized the corruption and everything that had happened, and so many people throughout the country went to work during that time. That is how he won. The next step is for every American to go to work, and not just to let your imagination make you happy, not to think that arguments are going to make everything fine, but for you yourself to take ownership and to start thinking about the way of life that makes sense for you in this 21st new American century. And that's going to take a lot of people in a lot of different sectors, and you see it happening all over. And you should take heart, look around, follow those leaders, and get inspiration from the people who are moving. So, for instance, manufacturing, is coming back. There are many young people who are working with people in finance to bring manufacturing back to America. When it comes to media, there's all kinds of moves that various companies are making. You can see what we're doing here at Blaze. So in each sector of the economy, you see a new way of life, a new way of progressing and moving forward, taking shape. And no matter what you're doing in your own life, you have to think about that. You can't lose sight of that, because ultimately the work of making America great again is the work of making you and your family great again. And we all need to remember that moving forward.
Well, and we get the reminder today, Elon Musk can't do it all. He's busy today with all the cyber attacks that are happening there for X.
Yeah.
So even Trump's bestie probably had to take the day off of doging to go back and run the actual companies that he is the CEO and owner of.
Well, look, Elon hires great people to run these companies, which is why he can do what he does. He hires incredible teams, and he bounces around all over the place. So, he's always doing various jobs in every day that goes by. In this particular case, though, with X, I think the main interest that Elon's going to have after he gets this thing back to work is who did this and how to punish them. And whoever did it is going to receive his wrath and the wrath perhaps of other parties as well. So I find it very interesting. You knew these attacks were coming. These attacks have been there all the time. It's not a surprise that this happened. But what's different about this time is, I don't think that Uncle Elon is going to take this very kindly. And the ... in that tweet is a threat back to whoever did this to him.
Well, it is important, though, just to look back at the way of life in our conversation with Mark Meadows, where he says he believes that the Republicans are going to have a honeymoon up through May.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's great. We can get things done through May.
Right.
And then what? Then you have to fight. Then you have to go back and realize that trying to take down the deep state, the administrative state, is going to be a years-long, if not decades-long battle to get this back and fixed in Washington, D.C., if it's even possible to do entirely at all.
The deep state, the administrative state has existed for decades because they wait people out. They know that they're not going to go anywhere. You can come in and you can change everyone on the top that's a political appointee in the top of the pyramid. You change all them out. They don't care. The rest of the ship is occupied by the pirates. And you can maybe even go a little deeper and you fire some people. Who cares? They exist to wait you out, to tell you what you want to hear. They are all pragmatists. And that's a problem because unless you change the very shape of the boat, you have to change the structure of government, we won't change anything. So, but I think this principle applies to the entire potential golden age that reaches out before us. And the point is, it's not just going to be till May. There's a honeymoon period to race forward in that time, get as much done as you can. But you want to set up a situation in which, moving forward for decades, right, you and your family are going to be moving in a different direction as opposed to one that leads to decay and corruption. And that's what we want. But that's why we're here. We're not going to go anywhere, and we're going to keep on keeping on and holding people accountable, including ourselves.
And legacy media is still going to make your hair set on fire. I was watching basketball yesterday, and then 60 Minutes came on directly after the basketball game. And the first 30 seconds of 60 Minutes had me going, oh, are you kidding me? Right? Like, it didn't even take an entire segment. It was just that quick little hit off the top.
We're going to make a better 60 Minutes here. We're going to make a better 60 Minutes weekly show, get everyone on to do the investigative. The thing about it is they're done, right? They're done, Jill. I mean,
they're like, Trump fired us. We're nonpartisan. We've been nonpartisan for 40 years. If you think that anyone believes that you're actually nonpartisan, we don't.
Elon,
we're over it.
Elon,
Thanks for
we're going to make
everybody.
69 Minutes right here.
See you back here tomorrow.